We are talking about inversions today, where we turn stuff upside down. You take an interval, you flip it around, what does it become? I don't know. Let's go find out. So yes, today we are going to demystify inversions. I'm going to give you two different ways to think about them, but I'm also going to give you an easy way to memorize them. So make sure and stick around till the end of the video and check it out. Okay, so you have two notes, an interval, distance between two notes, right? Let's say it's a fifth. The easiest way to think about inverting that fifth is to take either one of the notes in the pair and to raise it or lower it an octave. That's an inversion. Let me show you. Let's take our example of the fifth. Let's say we have a C and a G. I've got a C, I've got a G. In the C major scale, G is the fifth note, makes it the fifth. We've gone over that already. So if C is 1, G is 5, okay? And again, we have this distance here of a fifth. When we play C and then G, that's a fifth. Now, what if I were to take either of those and raise or lower them an octave? Now, you have to do it crossing the other one. So I'm going to take this C note here, and I'm going to actually raise it up an octave. So I'm going to put it right there, which means that now I have a G and a C. Same set of notes, but it's been inverted. And once inverted, most of the time, it yields a new interval, meaning not the original interval that you started with. So I'm still thinking that I have I'm in some kind of C chord here. I have C in its fifth, but the distance is not the same, because if I start from G and go 1, 2, 3, 4, well, C is the fourth note in the key of G, which means that when I once had a fifth and I raise that C up an octave, now I've got a fourth. You know, kind of like, it kind of turns it upside down. We could do it this way. We could take that G and lower it by an octave. So C and G, 1 and 5. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take that G and lower it by 1 octave. That brings us over here. So the C is the same. The G's been lowered, but that distance has changed again. It's the same distance we ended up when we inverted it the other way. So it doesn't matter if I have my fifth here and I bring the C up to there, or if I bring the G down to there. Either way, we've inverted this interval, and either way, it yields the distance of a fourth. What was a fifth when turned upside down now turns into a fourth. Doesn't matter where you play it. Where are we going to play it? There we go. There it is. Here's a different way to think about it. How can you tell if an interval has been inverted? So we have our C and G here. Is this an inversion, or is it a standard interval? Well, if I'm calling C1, remember before I was saying we're probably in some kind of C chord. Well, if I'm thinking of C as 1, then we're in a C chord. It could be C major, C minor, C sus4, C sus2, whatever your C chord you like. But you've got a 1 and a 5, and you're in C. You're thinking of C as 1. Okay, in that case, this is a root position interval, meaning that the root is the bass note. It's the lowest note. The 1 is the lowest note. So what about this? If I know I'm in a C chord, now I can see that this has been inverted. So another way to think about this is to just think about, who are you calling 1? So I'll just take a random interval here. Here's a D and an F. Now, in some kind of D chord, or in a key of D or something like that, I have a 1, and in this case, it's a minor 3. And that's my interval. But if I'm in some kind of F chord, in other words, if I'm going to call F number 1, then now D is what? Minus 3? No, we don't do that. Well, let's find out. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just playing my F scale there. And I end up on D, and D is number 6. So I say, oh, okay, this is either a minor third, where D is 1, or it could be an inverted sixths, major sixths, where F is now 1. So I've got some rules at the top of this sheet here. Let's check these out. These are my 3 rules for memorizing intervals. Just these 3 simple things. And really, it's all about the first 2. The third is sort of an exception. Numbers. If you invert a 2, it becomes a 7. Now, these happen in pairs. Okay, there's only 3 pairs. Again, pretty easy. And you're looking at coming from opposite sides of the scale, basically. So you think of 1 and 8. Well, we're going to close in on that. And now 2 and 7, they're a pair. Okay, they're a pair that get inverted into each other, meaning, again, the 2s become 7s, and the 7s become 2s. So if you have any kind of 2 and you invert it, it will become some kind of 7. And of course, the opposite is true. Isn't that convenient? So awesome. If you have any kind of 7, it inverts to become some kind of 2. Any 3 will become some kind of 6. So 3s become 6s. And the opposite is still true. Oh, this is so easy. I love this. And again, we're closing in on the octave. We have 1s and 8s, right? Which, of course, an octave inverts into itself. It's still an octave. But then you have 2s and 7s. You have 3s and 6s, right? We're closing in there. We're just taking these numbers and taking from either side of the 1 and the 8 and bringing them in. And those are our inversion pairs. That was quite a sentence to get out. So 3s and 6s are a pair. 4s, any kind of 4 becomes some kind of 5. Okay, and any kind of 5 becomes some kind of 4. Okay, so that's the number side of things. 2s become 7s, 7s become 2s, et cetera, et cetera. The quality meaning just major, minor, perfect, augmented, diminished. The clarifier, right, on the interval, because of course we have 2s and 7s, but they could be minor or major or what have you. So a major interval becomes a minor interval when inverted. Always. Every single time. It's very clean, very easy to memorize. A minor interval becomes, you guessed it, it's a major interval. So the major becomes minor, minor becomes major. Perfect. I mean, who can improve upon perfection, right? So a perfect just stays perfect, okay? Perfect remains perfect. See, it says right there, and that's how you know it's true. Those are your main rules, those 2 rules for inversions. That's going to get you through pretty much everything. I want to introduce you to the concept of the tritone. A tritone is a sharp 4 or a flat 5, right? That's the same interval, whether you have a sharp 4 or a flat 5. We're looking at the same thing. I'll show you, just in case you don't believe me. I'm on C here, and I have a G. Well, this is a G flat, and we would call that a flat 5. If I'm on C and we have an F, I could push that F up, and it would be called a sharp 4. It's the same interval. We call that spelling, by the way, whether we're going to call that an F sharp or a G flat. And I've got a video on that. If you missed it, be sure and check that out. Sharp 4, flat 5. F sharp, G flat. That's the same distance. Okay, this interval is so cool and so important and thinks so much of itself that it got its own name, and we call it the tritone. And the tritone does not distinguish the function of the interval. In other words, it doesn't say, well, this should be spelled like a sharp 4, like an F sharp, or this should be spelled like a G flat, like a flat 5, right? So it doesn't get into that. It's just a very bipartisan interval? I don't know if that works. Anyways, a tritone it could be either one. That's just a fun little added term for you, a little bonus for this lesson. But the tritone, the point of me introducing it here, the tritone inverts to itself. I'll prove it to you. Here we go. So the C to the F sharp there, if I bring this C up an octave, that is still a sharp 4 or flat 5. It's still a tritone. It still has that same sound. It still has that needing to be resolved kind of a sound. Now, the sharp 4, again, remember our 4s and 5s swap for each other, so the sharp 4 would technically become a flat 5. The flat 5 would technically become a sharp 4. Again, they're both still a tritone. Here we see a little graphic showing us what I've been telling you. The 2s become 7s, and the 7s become 2s, right? I have here the major scale, so all the intervals in the major scale here. I've also added the tritone here. We're going to get all the minor intervals on this side. Yeah, we can cross-reference. Whatever interval you're looking for, it's going to be up here. So 2s, right, become 7s, which means that if you have a major second, it's going to become a 7th. If you have a major 7th, it's going to become a 2nd, right? Those are our pairings, the 7s and the 2s. The major, of course, becomes minor. So the 2 becomes a 7, but if it's a major 2, it becomes a minor 7th. You're always going to swap that quality. You're never going to invert a major interval and have it still be a major interval. I mean, what's fun about that? There's nothing fun about that. So we don't do it that way. We have a minor second down here, right? We looked at the major second. Well, let's take a look at the minor second. What's the rule? Minor 2 inverts. 2 inverts to what number? Yes, 7. And then minor inverts to what? Yes, major. Good. I'm glad you're following along. So a minor second inverts to become a major 7th. And we can just go all the way down the line like this. The major third becomes the minor six. Okay, because threes become sixes, major becomes minor. If you were already a minor six and you wanted to invert, it goes the other way too. Notice the arrows go both ways. That's right. River runs both directions in this world here. Okay, fourth. This is a little bit different. Let's go ahead and check this one out. So a 4 becomes what? Becomes a 5. 4s and 5s swap for each other, right? And perfect. What do you do with perfection? You leave it alone. That's it. Perfect stays perfect. So the 4 becomes a 5, but it was a perfect fourth. So we're just going to leave it. It becomes a perfect fifth. And we saw that, right? That was our first example with the C and the G, the 1 and 5, and you invert it, becomes a 4. Speaking of which, here is that 5 here. So if it's a 5, it becomes what? It becomes a 4. Yes, good. Don't mess with perfection. That's the rule, boys and girls. So that perfect fifth, we're just going to leave that perfect fourth. And that's our inversion. Of course, we're down here at the very end. The 6 becomes a 3. It was major, so it becomes minor. If you had the third, and we had this one again. Remember, we had the D. We had the D and the F. So a D and an F there. That is a minor third. And you know that because I told you, and I wouldn't steer you wrong. I really wouldn't. But if you invert that, if you call F number 1, right, D is now number 6. Right? And so we say the 3 inverts to become a 6. And if it was minor, now it becomes major. So that D and an F, you turn them upside down, and it's a major 6. That tritone is also represented here. Tritone becomes itself. It's still a tritone. If you called it a sharp 4, it will now be called a flat 5. If you called it a flat 5, it will now be called a sharp 4. That's how that works. Congratulations, you have made it to the end of my 6-lesson series, Intervals in Music. If you missed any of those, if this is your first lesson, or if you need to go back and brush up on any, I will put the playlist up for you. Make sure and check that out. Everything you need to know about intervals is in this series. Well, at least everything I think you should know about intervals is in this series. But good for you. You now know your intervals literally backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards and every way from Sunday. I'm really proud of you for getting through this. As a special bonus to this lesson series, I'm going to give you one more video because I just can't stop myself. And that's going to be on inversions again, but this time we're going to be looking at the patterns on the bass and the guitar fretboard. We're going to look at what those look like. Again, how to think about them from a guitar player or a bass player point of view. And I will also give you an exercise to help with your dexterity or your muscle memory as it relates to inversions. My name is Alex, and I will see you in the next lesson. Here's where you can find me. What's fun about that? There's nothing fun about that.